act accordingly.
That's not what I said. You put words in my mouth. I said, should he be able to render an opinion, and should the Fed take that into consideration?
No.
I think he should be able to have an opinion.
I didn't say anything.
And they should take that into. It shouldn't be the only thing.
I didn't say
he should
anything.
have an opinion.
The president can have whatever opinions he wants. Yeah. What I'm asking is whether the Fed should be independent in their decision making from those opinions.
And I said, does that mean they can take his opinion into consideration? And I think they should take the president's opinion into consideration. That's not the only thing. That's
let
one
me
of the things.
see if
Scott Jennings joins the panel on NewsNight with Abby Phillip, and it doesn't take long before his frustration shows. Clearly fed up with the panel's misleading takes on Trump's tariffs, Jennings steps in with facts that cut through the noise. Let's watch as he schools the CNN crowd, once again proving why he's the only reason some viewers still bother tuning in.
Well, the Fed is obviously independent. It's supposed to be independent, but independence in Trump's head does not exist. He does not understand why a federal government must be independent from himself. He believes that his power and the executive branch's power should dictate what happens with the Fed and with the Department of Justice and with our military, with all of the various things that should be independent. The reality is, as you talk about, Trump being spooked, it's a little late for Trump to be spooked at this point. We've been talking about tariffs. He has been talking about this for quite some time. The markets are in disarray. We're heading toward a recession. Everybody is saying that this is a terrible thing. And yet for just now, all of a sudden, he woke up and he realized, this is a terrible thing for our economy and our country.
I just have to respond to your assertion that the federal government should operate independently of the elected president of the United States. You mentioned the Fed,
and you have the Department of Justice.
You said DOJ, which is obviously appointed and works for the president.
No, but it's independent. Your laws should not be enforced based on the president. They should be enforced based on the law.
You said the military. Obviously, he's the commander-in-chief of the military. I'm just trying to figure out what percentage or part of the government that you think should run away from the president.
There are institutions that are independent.
I'm going to step in here because I don't want us to change the subject, okay? We are talking about the independence of the Fed. Do you agree or disagree that the Fed should be independent?
I think the president should be able to
that
render
actually
an opinion about
that is a
monetary
yes
policy.
Or no.
Whether he should be able to fire him is an open question.
That is a yes or no question. Should the Fed be independent of the whims of any president of the United States?
I think the president ought to be able to have opinions.
Why can't you say yes or no?
Previous presidents.
I think it's an open question where they should be able to fire the head of the Fed. Some Republican senators don't agree.
So, Scott.
But I don't. Right. I just think the idea that the president should not have any opinion.
I cover this show regularly, and once again, NewsNight with Abby Phillip crosses the line. Abby is flat out rude to Scott Jennings here. She throws out a yes or no question, but let's be honest, this show never actually lets anyone hold them to a direct answer. What Scott is trying to highlight is simple. The Federal Reserve doesn't have to follow Trump's advice. But shouldn't a sitting president at least be part of the conversation when it comes to critical policies, like interest rates? The bigger issue here is how much of our own government seems to be actively working against Donald Trump. Every time he tries to exercise executive authority that millions of Americans voted to give him, Democrats throw up another legal or institutional hurdle. And when he pushes back or questions judicial interference, CNN immediately spins it as Trump wants total control. Yes, agencies like the Fed are designed to function independently, but Trump faces resistance at every turn. Then, when he simply demands to do the job he was elected to do, the media paints it as a power grab. In reality, all he's asking for is the ability to use the authority that legally belongs to his office. Let's get back to the video and watch how this unfolds.
About monetary policy,
I'm going to give you a third try on this one. Should the Fed's decisions about how they operate, the interest rates, when they raise or lower them, should they be independent of the President of the United States?
Does independent mean they don't take his opinion into consideration?
Independent means no, they don't take his opinion into consideration.
I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I think the president. I think the president should be able to render an opinion. I'm going to ask Charlotte, what do you know? This was taken in by the markets, that idea, right? This week, what was the reaction among people who are making money? They have businesses. They are operating in the financial world to this idea that people like Scott believe that the Fed should be listening to the president and act accordingly. That's not what I said. You put words in my mouth. I said, should he be able to render an opinion, and should the Fed take that into consideration?
No.
I think he should be able to have an opinion.
I didn't say anything.
And they should take that into consideration. It shouldn't be the only thing.
I didn't
but
say
he should
anything.
have an opinion.
The president can have whatever opinions he wants. Yeah. What I'm asking is whether the Fed should be independent in their decision making from those opinions.
I said, does that mean they can take his opinion into consideration? And I think they should take the president's opinion into consideration. That is not the only thing.
Let me see if Charlotte has some thoughts on this.
I think it's very clear from the market's response that not just the desired outcome, the fundamental law of nature needs to be that the Federal Reserve, the chair of the Federal Reserve, makes decisions on monetary policy that are based on economic data, not on the whims of a president. And that's very, very clear. And I think, the job of the Fed is complex, particularly in the environment in which Trump has placed Jerome Powell, where you have a threat of slowing growth and increasing inflation due to these tariffs, right? So you have a stagflationary environment that's very hard for the Fed to manage. It is true that some investors probably, if Jerome Powell were to lower interest rates.
3. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Now, let's jump back in. Like what you're seeing. Hit that like button and subscribe. We truly appreciate the support. Back to the video. Support the channel by liking and subscribing if you enjoy content like this. Let's get back to it. Liking this kind of content, click like, hit subscribe, and let's dive right back in. Your support means a lot. Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's continue the conversation.
I'm not going to predict how the market would respond. However, it's very, very clear that the market responds extremely negatively to even a hint that the president might intervene.
There's a direct
intervening and rendering an opinion are two different things.
There's a direct effect here with the American worker that has to do with China and with the stock market that people are seeing every day. Donald Trump ran on being tough on China, and workers and folks in America, they love that talk. They love being tough on China, but they also love getting really cheap stuff from Walmart, and they can't have both at the same time. And I think that's why you see him backing off of that. With the stock market, regular folks don't understand Dows and bonds and all that, but they understand their 401k. And I think that's where the pressure's coming from, is people around there saying, you're hurting your own people. And so you see people backing down.
Do you think there is an argument to honestly believe the president shouldn't be able to render opinions about monetary policy?
You keep repeating something that nobody ever said. No one ever said that Trump cannot have
having original thoughts here.
No, Scott. No one ever said that Trump can't have an opinion. The question is, should the Fed act based on that opinion? And I think it's just common sense, right? The Fed, it should be acting based on...
Of course, Scott, because the last thing they want is Trump actually running the government effectively. That might mean real results, and heaven forbid Republicans get a win. Just look at the difference. Clinton and Obama deported millions quietly. Yet now, if Trump tries to remove even one criminal illegal immigrant, it's national news. Spot the double standard. But we want to hear from you. What did you think of this panel? Drop your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.